Jon Moxley defeats Bryan Danielson in the main event of AEW Dynamite Grand Slam to become a three-time AEW World Champion. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there are plenty of news stories to get into in the world of All Elite Wrestling, and we have to talk about the new AEW World Champion, the main event of last night's edition of Dynamite. The Grand Slam edition of Dynamite in Arthur Ashe Stadium saw a new AEW World Champion crowned, and he's meant to be on vacation. No vacation for Jon Moxley, because he is indeed the new AEW World Champion. Now, after former two-time AEW World Champion CM Punk, of course, was injured and suspended following the AEW All-Out pay-per-view, the AEW World title was, of course, vacated and put up in a tournament, the Tournament of Champions, to determine the new AEW World Champion. After holding said Tournament of Champions over the past few weeks, we finally got down to the last two participants in the tournament. Blackpool Combat Club members Jon Moxley and Bryan Danielson faced one another at AEW's Revolution pay-per-view, of course, earlier this year. And on Wednesday night's edition of Dynamite Grand Slam, they went at it once again, this time with the AEW World Championship being on the line. Now, to get to the finals, Moxley defeated Sammy Guevara to earn his place in the tournament final, while Bryan Danielson forced Chris Jericho to tap out to secure his spot in the final. Now, Moxley and Danielson's highly anticipated rematch took place at the special Grand Slam edition of Dynamite at Arthur Ashe Stadium in New York. The two men faced off in the main event, with Moxley looking to capture his third AEW World Championship, with Danielson attempting to secure his first reign and avenge his loss to Moxley earlier this year. However, in the end, it was Moxley indeed who emerged victorious once again, choking out Danielson to secure the victory. Moxley is now the first ever three-time AEW World Champion. This comes just weeks after he became the first two-time holder of the championship, and just 2 weeks after he lost the title to CM Punk at All Out. Now, with this title victory, Moxley has a big target on his back, because not only does MJF, of course, have a future title shot in hand whenever he wishes, but there is also a golden ticket battle royale on this Friday's edition of Rampage, the Grand Slam edition of Rampage, which will give another wrestler a future shot at Moxley's championship. So, I thought the match was very, very good, as you would expect. In terms of the outcome, I was slightly surprised, and not clearly this was not the plan, because nothing that has happened in the last few weeks was the plan. The plan clearly was to have CM Punk versus MJF at some point for the World Championship. Now, I'm not going to give away the spoiler of the person that won the Battle Royale. We don't really do spoilers too much here on the channel, especially for stuff that hasn't aired just yet. So we'll wait for that to air on Friday. But let's just say the person that won that Battle Royale, would he have won it if CM Punk was the AEW World Champion? I don't know, because the person who won it and CM Punk, they have some issues. So I don't know if that would have happened. But, you know, the last few days and weeks I've said that I wanted Bryan Danielson to win the match and win the World Championship, because I thought, you know, I wanted that moment for Danielson, and I thought that Moxley has just been in that spot a lot for the last however many months. Of course, he was the interim world champion, then he won the championship again when he defeated Punk, and then he dropped the championship and all that kind of stuff. And I just thought, are they really just going to go back to Moxley straight away? Is that really fresh enough? Is that the right move to do? So I was slightly surprised that they did that. But then I guess when you look at it, AEW and Tony Khan, they've been telling us for the last few weeks that that's what they were going to do. Look what happened in the post-All-Out edition of Dynamite. You had MJF have his promo. Who was he interrupted by? Jon Moxley. And you had the face-off between Moxley and MJF. And right then and there, and I did say this at the time, I did kind of tweak in my head a little bit. I thought, they're building to Moxley and MJF. That's what they're doing. And realistically, it kind of is the same sort of story, is it not? It's the same sort of story that they were going to do with MJF and CM Punk. Because you remember what happened last time MJF and CM Punk went against each other. AEW Revolution, the dog collar match, CM Punk wins and that ends the feud. And clearly the storyline they were going to do is that MJF, after his hiatus, he returns, wins the Casino ladder match, then Future sets up a match against CM Punk and he wins the AEW World Championship. Well, you can kind of slide CM Punk out of that and put Jon Moxley in, because Jon Moxley has defeated MJF before for the AEW World Championship. When was it? All Out 2020, I believe it was. Main event of that was MJF versus Jon Moxley, and it was a very weird storyline that they did that time. It was during a presidential year, so, MJF was doing a lot of presidential stuff on TV and saying he wanted Moxley out. It was just bizarre. I don't think it worked very well, in my opinion, but it led to the match at All Out between Moxley and MJF, which was pretty good, actually. It wasn't that bad at all, and you can kind of, again, play that same story in that MJF finally wins the World Championship by defeating a guy that had defeated him in the past. Not many people have defeated MJF in All Elite Wrestling. There's Moxley, there's Punk, there's Wardlow. In terms of others that have actually pinned him or made him submit, Chris Jericho, it's a who's who. There aren't many. So you could, and this is what they're doing clearly, is sliding Moxley in that spot instead of CM Punk, and they can still tell the same overall story. This was a guy that beat me in the past. This is a guy that I've never beaten before, even though MJF has beaten CM Punk before in Chicago. But I guess the story's even better with Moxley. This is a guy that I've never beaten before, and I'm going to beat him for the World Championship. And I suppose, frankly, whilst I would have liked it to have been Danielson, and I'm a big, obviously, who isn't a big Bryan Danielson fan, it's just another case of Jon Moxley, I guess, being rewarded for being the MVP of the company. Look, Jon Moxley this year, you can talk about PWI 500. The fact he wasn't in the top 10 of that is a wild decision, considering everything he's done this year. But the way that he's come back from obviously the issues that he was having. Like, he was towards the end of last year to check himself into rehab for alcohol abuse. And he comes back at the beginning of the year, and you can put up his year against anything in pro wrestling, right? Maybe it's not Roman Reigns level or anything like that, but the year he's had, the matches he's had, the feuds he's had, and various points now when the company has needed him, he has stepped up. He truly is the MVP of AEW. And I know not a lot of people, or some people, don't like Jon Moxley, and they don't like the way he works, or they say that he bleeds too much, or he's not the consummate wrestler and his matches aren't great, or whatever you may think about Jon Moxley. This guy continues to step up for AEW when he's needed. Earlier this year, CM Punk goes down with the injury. Jon Moxley steps in. Main event's Forbidden Door at the United Center against Tanahashi. Has a great match. Interim world champion. CM Punk gets suspended and injured once again. Jon Moxley steps up. As I mentioned, he wasn't even meant to be there last night. After All Out, the plan was he was going to go on vacation. He was going to be on a bit of a hiatus. He was going to be on vacation, and he was going to return October time. I think there's a Dynamite in Cincinnati, his hometown. He was going to return then, and Moxley was going to be back. But because of what happened, because of the situation with CM Punk and the Elite, he was needed. Star power was needed, and he stepped up. He appeared on the Dynamite after All Out. He's worked this tournament, and now he's the world champion once again, and now he's going to carry the company for a little bit of time to get them to the point where they're going and the point they need to be with MJF as world champion. Once again, when the company has needed Jon Moxley steps up. And again, I think he has to be credited for that. He really does. And again, whilst it might have, I think Danielson might have been the better option, this is, I perceive it as anyway, a reward for, he's the most decorated, I guess, champion in AEW history right now. And when you do look at the history of All Elite Wrestling, it does all kind of surround Jon Moxley. What were the closing moments of AEW's first ever show, Double or Nothing in 2019? It was Jon Moxley. It was Jon Moxley's debut. He dropped Chris Jericho and he dropped Kenny Omega, and then, just months later at Full Gear, you had the main event match he had with Kenny Omega, the Lights Out match. Moxley, in the 3 or so years that AEW's been around, it's all been centered around him. And he's carried the company on his back at really difficult and challenging times throughout the pandemic. Earlier this year. Now, once again, this guy stepped up. And again, whether you like Jon Moxley or not, whether you're a fan of his work or not, he delivers. And he continues to deliver for AEW. So, yeah, I was a little bit surprised by the outcome, but I think that the guys deserved it. And the only issue I suppose you could say is that, and this isn't the fault of Moxley, and it's not really the fault of AEW too much, but there's been a lot of short title reigns recently. Of course, you've got the interim reign, and then CM Punk loses it to Moxley, and then Moxley loses it back, and then Moxley's the champion again. The whole title scene is a bit of a mess. Now, in retrospect, maybe it wasn't the best idea to have that match between Moxley and Punk on Dynamite, because now we've had a lot of title reigns in a short period of time, but they weren't to know, really, AEW, what was going to happen at All Out in terms of the explosion and the brawl and all this kind of stuff. So I cut him a bit of slack with that, but there you go. Moxley's the AEW World Champion. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below on Jon Moxley being an AEW World Champion for the 3rd time. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right-hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.